love listening to it.
Kane Sims.
Kane Sims.
Kane Sims, the one and only Britain's finest, Mr. Kane Sims. Dustin Coates.
I like it when you guys are together and talking about voice.
Without further ado,
Welcome to the show.
All right. Just like that. Here we are, ready to rumble. How is things, Dustin?
Things are going okay. How about you? I'm digging the hoodie. When do I get one of those?
You get one of those ASAP as soon as I can get packages to arrive at your place successfully. We'll definitely have one in the post. You're mixing up the old the locations, Dustin. Giving a tour of your apartment on every episode these days.
Yeah, I think at this point everyone knows exactly the layout of my apartment. But yeah, just changing things up a little bit. I'm now in front of the window. It's nice. It's nice.
You got to. Welcome, Antony. Welcome to VUX World.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's a nice colour you've got going on there. I want to see that. That's Ignitia Blue, Farrow and Ball, is it?
Yeah, my wife repainted the room and hates it, but everybody seems to like it on video, so I guess it works.
Yeah. If that's Farrow and Ball, that's not cheap paint. I can tell you that because my wife spends a fortune on it and decorates this place with it. But yeah, pleasure to have you on, and thank you everyone for joining and tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about Google CCAI, Contact Center AI, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, Antony. This is the honest truth. I've been hoping and wanting this conversation for a long time because our history, if you go back far enough, is rooted in your likes of Google Assistant and the voice assistant space. And, we've been working in the sort of contact center environment and customer services for a while. And then we see Google release this kind of suite of tools that seems to have, in some parts, some history with Google Assistant and all this kind of stuff and very similar technologies. And, we've been exploring it for a while and excited to see where it goes and what you're up to. So thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah. Exciting. Yeah, there's a lot of history there with Assistant, and we can talk about it. It's an interesting story, but what's interesting is that it's really accelerating. Like in the last 2 years, it's been pretty impressive what we've been able to deliver, and really happy to release all that technology now. It's all coming together, and we're seeing great results. So happy to share all of that.
Nice. What's it off? Who is it that says, "I love it when a plan comes together"?
Yeah.
Is that the A team? Is it the A team? Yeah. I don't know. Something like that.
I think it is. Yeah.
I love it when a plan comes together. Nice. Well, Antony, thank you for joining us. So you are the head of Conversational AI and Contact Center at Google Cloud. Do you want to tell the people tuning in a little bit about what that role is and what you do at Google Cloud and how that relates to CCAI?
Yeah, I own the product, the product suite basically. So whatever touches conversational AI for Google Cloud, which is a set of products. So some underlying technologies like the speech to text API or text to speech API, some of the NLU technologies that we have. But on top of that, really, what's interesting is the various products. DialogFlow for the self-service channel, bots for voice and chat. The agent assist to help human agent do their job better and gain insights on what's going on in real time as they're talking to customers. And the latest one is Insights, which is coming very, very soon, which is about understanding all your contact center and everything that's happening there. So it's kind of a product suite under the umbrella of CCAI. And so I own that. I have a team of product managers that do a great job at delivering on those products, but I'm helping drive a change in the market with this.
Nice. Sorry, I was just trying to put the link in LinkedIn there. Wicked. So you mentioned that some of it has a history with Google Assistant. Let's unpack that a little bit. Yeah. So where did CCAI come from, and what relationship, if any, does it have with Google Assistant and the technologies?
Well, it started about 4 years ago, I think, somewhere around that, where we did Assistant actually did an acquisition of a company called API.ai. And API.ai was a tool to help people build better Google Assistant interactions. And turned out that in Google Cloud, we were really interested with this technology. And a lot of Google Cloud customers actually started using API.ai to build bots for their enterprise. And it became DialogFlow. And so we started splitting a little bit, working toward more enterprise use cases with DialogFlow as Assistant was working on their own path, and we were sharing a lot of the NLU underlying the technology. But as time passed, we saw much more traction in the enterprise and had to separate ourselves a little bit in terms of how you manage the system itself. The NLU is common, but the system, the designer, the interaction, the webhooks, the infrastructure, the security level, the privacy that we could provide with DialogFlow kind of diverged a bit. And I think I would say about 2 years ago, we started embarking on a new journey toward larger enterprise. So we had literally I think we have about 1.5 million developers now on DialogFlow signed up, but we saw that big move toward large companies, like Verizon and the likes, that wanted to have a lot more flexibility and being able to handle more complex use cases with their virtual agents. And so DialogFlow migrated toward what we just launched in January, which is DialogFlow CX. But at the same time, we expanded toward Agent Assist and Insights, so we added to the portfolio. So the history starts at API.ai 4 years ago, but I think there's somewhat of a split about 2 years ago to address those large enterprise use cases.
Interesting. And so for those who, you mentioned there's DialogFlow, there's CX that was created, there is Agent Assist, Analytics, and Insights. Those are the four main components. Insights not out yet, but Insights is coming. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah. So Insights is in early preview right now. It's coming out in preview. We'll say it's kind of a beta. It's a new term. Like we don't have alpha beta anymore. We have previews and GA. So preview is coming out, I think, in the next month. Analytics is Insights. There's no analytics product per se. It is Insights. So DialogFlow, Agent Assist, and Insights are the three main products.
Fair enough. That makes sense. Okay then. So DialogFlows has been used a lot for Google Assistant actions, as well as chatbots, as well as contact center, etc. For those that are tuning in, they are more than likely have experienced DialogFlow in some shape or form. So what is it that drove the need for DialogFlow CX? Where did CX come from? So CX is a bit more graphical. It's slightly different to ES. What's the history there?
Yeah, and that's actually very important. So DialogFlow Essentials, ES, is basically DialogFlow, the DialogFlow that everybody knows, the kind of prior version, if you will. That was meant to build simpler interactions. So 1 or 2 turns, maybe 3 turns if you really need to go a little deeper. But some people have called it like slot filling type of bots. It is a little bit of that, ask something, get intent and entities, and do something with a webhook or cloud function. Fairly simple. But when you talk about larger enterprise, they need to handle much more complex use cases, longer, 5, 10, 12 turns, 15 turns in a conversation, or things that last for 2 or 3 minutes on the voice side. And being able to handle that with DialogFlow Essential was very difficult, because linking intents between them, the dependency between intents, was a little difficult to do. And the visual builder was a big improvement, where you can see a complete flow, manage the transition in a drag and drop UI, all without code, was really important to a lot of customers. But it really doesn't stop there. DialogFlow CX came from a need for better predictability in spending, for example. So the pricing model is different. It's a session-based rather than a turn or 15-second increment. It has a scalability capabilities that are much higher. So DialogFlow CX can handle 40,000 intent in a single implementation. If you compare that, DialogFlow Essentials is 2,000 intent. You can have Mega Agent on it, which allows you to go to 20, but CX with 40,000 intent. And we have customers that are in the many thousands, like 15 to 17,000 intents. So it does happen, and you need this kind of scale. It also has a lot more features toward IVR. So when you use DialogFlow Essentials, it's unlikely that you're going to replace your IVR or enhance your IVR with it. It's more about interaction. If you think about Assistant, it's interaction with a smart device. In the enterprise, they all have IVRs, and they want to make those IVRs conversational. So DialogFlow CX supports things like barging and timeouts and retries and DTMF support, things like that. That's you need in a traditional IVR. So those functionalities are there as well. And we also support a lot more features around kind of collaboration, analytics, experiments, feedback loop, what we call feedback loop. All those are still, some of them are still in the work. We're still enhancing the product, but the goal is to have teams working on your bots and your interactions, not just a 1 or 2 person. And so when you have teams, you have conflicts, you have change management, you have history of changes, you have access controls that you need. So CX is going in that direction, delivering for the enterprise in a much better way.
And so could you see or could you think of CX as the enterprise version? Or maybe to put it another way, if you're used to DialogFlow ES, can you move over to CX, or are they different enough that it's a new learning curve?
It's a little bit different. The concepts, the data model are different. You have a notion of page, and it's a intent-driven design. So it's a little bit it's different. Like there's a little bit of a learning going from ES to CX. We are not deprecating ES, by the way. It still serves an entire market of people that want to build bots either on simple interactions, or they don't have a lot of intents. They have simpler intents. So ES is still there, and we're still improving the product. So that's why we have those two products now. CX really targeted at larger, medium to large enterprise, and essentials to small and medium businesses, or even individual hobbyists or developers that want to build NLU-based interactions.
And are they targeted towards different in profiles as well? Because you mentioned with DialogFlow ES, it's maybe more code-driven, whereas with CX, you've got the visual editor, and it's maybe more visual-driven. Do you have different profiles, or do you find overall that are the ones actually implementing it from ES to CX?
Yeah, I would say when we work with customers that are deploying DialogFlow CX, the people who are designing are conversational architects, what we call it. It's kind of a new role that we're finding. We have quite a few at Google that are experts in there. They've been designing bots for many years. But the conversational architect is a core skill set of designing the right bot and taking into account the NLU performance as you're doing it. Is more the type of profile that will work on DialogFlow CX versus DialogFlow Essentials. It's pretty simple. Like any developer can do that, and you don't necessarily need a conversational architect when you're using ES. So you'll see different profiles, as you mentioned. Yes.
Interesting. So sounds as though CX is, and you mentioned the conversational architect. I'm pretty sure Michael Kenny's put a question in here. I'm pretty sure he is one of the conversational architects on that team. We'll get to that question in a minute, Michael. So you mentioned that CX is potentially more powerful, can handle more intents. It's more built for the enterprise, and ES is more for that beginner kind of use case potentially, or smaller teams or individuals, etc. Is there anything like over and above the fact that CX can handle more intents and it's got a graphical interface? Like what would you advise be the core reasons for a team deciding to use CX versus ES? What are some of the fundamental questions that you would need to ask to determine which one to use?
It's mostly the complexity of the use cases. If you do need to have bots that are more than 2 or 3 turns, you're probably a CX candidate. So it's because it's going to be really hard to deliver on essentials. I mean, you'll be able to do it. Like companies like the Home Depot have done it really well, but it's complicated. And it's hard to maintain. And so as soon as you need longer conversation and you're trying to solve for longer use cases and conversations, CX is a good candidate. As soon as you have teams, CX, like you go CX. There's no, it's going to be pretty straightforward there. And if you need an IVR integration, so if you really need to be integrated in your contact center solution, you're probably your CX candidate as well. One thing that I forgot to mention, actually, which is pretty important, DialogFlow CX has a different NLU engine, what we call an advanced NLU, which has actually better performance than DialogFlow ES as well. So we've seen a little bit of an improvement in just the head intent detection for the similar use cases. We see a better performance on CX, and that's something to keep in mind as well. It wouldn't make you choose CX over essential if it was just for that, but that's an added benefit of using CX.
Interesting. What is it about the NLU that's different?
It's just basically using the latest BERT models that Google has worked on for several years and has released some of it actually open source. But we are improving on a BERT model that it's a little more advanced, and this is the one that we've been using for CX that is not deployed for Essentials, which still uses another NLU technology that is not BERT based.
Interesting. There'll be some people tuning in who build actions for Google Assistant, which they would typically use ES. You mentioned CX is more for the enterprise, more for integrating into contact centers, things like that. Is there a potential for CX to be then also able to be used with Google Assistant, or is that not part of your specific focus with CCAI?
No, it's totally possible. I mean, you can hook up DialogFlow CX with Assistant. Where we face issues, and it's not an issue, it's something companies and customers have to be mindful about. The terms of services of Google Assistant are different from the terms of services of DialogFlow CX. DialogFlow CX is a cloud product, 100%, and therefore abides to the terms of services of cloud. Your data is your data. We don't see it. We don't use your data. We can't see your data. It's all you. It's a cloud customer using a cloud product. It's not the case in Assistant. Assistant is more of a public-facing product where the terms of services are a little different, where they see a little more what's happening in the type of query and how the queries are handled, et cetera, et cetera. So when we talk to customers who are deploying CX, oftentimes the question comes up and we say, it's fine, you can use it, but do be mindful that the terms of services of a Google proper, Google search type of product are different from a Google Cloud product. And Google Assistant may see some of these early requests. What's in Dialogflow, they don't see it anymore, but they may see the early requests. So there's a consequence to do that. If you're fine with it, that's okay. You can do it, but you need to be aware of it.
Makes sense. Tariq, I know you've asked a question about Agent Assist. We will get onto Agent Assist. We'll get there shortly. We'll maybe just flash up Michael's question, and then you alluded to something a moment ago, which is taking BERT, which was researched model through Google. And I know that last time we spoke, you mentioned a few other things that have come out of Google's research that are part of CCAI. So we'll get into some of that in a moment. But first, Michael is asking, will Dialogflow CX start to open up third-party integrations, such as connecting to enterprise CMSs and things like that?
Yeah, so Dialogflow CX is taking the same backend integration paradigm as Dialogflow Essentials today. So you have webhooks and cloud functions that basically enable you to connect to about anything in the backend. We are seeing patterns in our customers that are pretty common around using APG. So that's another Google Cloud product. APG is an API management layer to front end the backend systems. So Dialogflow connects to APG. APG fulfills a bunch of requests. So something like, hey, I'd like to pay my bill, may need to hit 3 different systems in the backend. And instead of having Dialogflow hit all those systems via a complex webhook or some intermediary virtual machines or process, we hit APG, and APG does that really well. So we're seeing these kind of patterns happen, which allows Dialogflow to connect to CMS systems or CRM systems or any ERP or any kind of backend system. Now, if the question is here around native integration, that's something we're looking at. Is there a way to have native integration with some of the backend system, the CMS or CRM? That's something we're looking into. It's not like in the next few months. It's a little further away, but that's because Apigee is doing such a great job at it. We're relying more on Apigee right now.
Makes sense. So there's a couple of avenues we could go down here. Let's pick up the one that you kind of alluded to. You were talking about BERT. Last time we spoke, there was a few other things around some of the things that Google has that CCAI also kind of benefits from, or the research that's happened that CCAI benefits from. Things like predicting natural language generation for predicting, responses that agents might type or anything like that. I wonder if you can speak to a little bit of the why CCAI and how CCAI is benefiting from some of the other things that people might not really be aware of that Google's doing.
Yeah, it's an important point, because that's one of the value of the Google solution and Google Cloud, is that we're not an entity that is completely isolated from the benefit of the broader Google entity, which is the research that Google is doing for other products like search. Google has a massive amount of researchers, some of the top in the industry, that are always looking at ways to better understand conversations. Either it's for Google Assistant, or it's Google Search, or it's YouTube content, or it's Google Meet transcription, or any kind of or smart home, Google Home. There's researchers all day. All they do is try to improve what we're doing there, and Google Cloud actually benefits from that. And so we take that research and bring it in. The fun thing is we don't give back to them because we're same thing. We're bounded by Google Cloud privacy, but we do get a lot of benefit from these guys. So when we get that, things like things that most people are aware of and see is in Gmail or G Suite. As you're typing, you have autofill in. Or when you see an email and there's a bunch of responses that are proposed at the bottom, that smart reply is called smart reply, and the other one smart compose. Well, if you think about what a human agent can do on a chat channel, for example, where as they're typing, you would see those responses being auto-generated, or responses that are auto-filled, like proposing responses, smart reply. We've deployed that on Agent Assist for chat and using exactly the same backend as what's used for Gmail and G Suite. But the model is built with the customer data. So each customer has their own model. So the replies come from the customer's data set. The filling of the sentence come from the customer data set. So it's extremely accurate. It's very domain specific. And therefore, this has shown improvements that are pretty impressive in the various customers we've deployed it to, and even at Google in our own contact center. We've seen things like 30+% improvement in how many chats a person can handle in parallel. That's straight 30% improvement in efficiency for chat agents.
Wow.
We've seen 80% plus agent satisfaction on this. They love it. We've seen CSAT improvement 4 to 7 points, depending on some of the use cases, by using this kind of stuff, because the conversation is shorter, the answers are more accurate, it's fast. I mean, it's just faster overall. And when you think about chat agents who are switching between chat windows all the time, when they come back to a window and they see the responses, they don't lose context, so they pick up context a lot faster. So it's overall a very, very good experience, and we're really excited to have released this feature. This is actually coming out. This is getting the public API is launching this Thursday, actually. So you'll be able to integrate that with your own stuff Thursday. Right now, it goes through some of our chat partners.
Yeah, nice.
And so I think if for people who are ML or NLU adjacent, if they've heard of BERT, it's more it's maybe in the context of the Google featured snippets, the question answering. Is that what you're using BERT for? Or are you using it for intent recognition or other things as well? Or I guess the question is, do you do that type of question answering that people are used to seeing in those featured snippets in Google?
I think this is what you're describing is more what we call extractive search. Mm-hmm. I think it's when let me clarify. It's when you type in Google something and there's a little answer box.
Right, precisely.
Yeah, exactly. So this is something that's the same thing, where actually our Agent Assist team is trying to leverage that for Agent Assist use cases. Right now in Agent Assist, when either on voice or chat channel, we can suggest documents or responses, but the responses always come in the form that if you have an FAQ on your website or in a document, we can find the question that maps being talked about and give you an answer from that FAQ. But if it's part of a full document, at this point, we send you back the entire document and say the answer is in this document. And that very transparently hasn't been received very well. People are like, yeah, I'm not going to open the whole thing. It's taking too much time. So they are asking for extractive search. And so this is exactly what we're actually working on right now, is to make sure that we can extract the content. So that's the first thing, is extracting the content from a document that's relevant to the conversation. That's pretty easy to do. The next step to that is generative content, actually creating an answer from content in a document rather than extracting the content itself. It's actually generating that answer. So that's something also that our research team is working in collaboration with us to make sure we can deliver. But that's going to be pretty efficient, actually. We're really excited about what we're seeing at this point.
A lot of information buried in various documents and stuff like that. Isn't
Yeah.
it? If you can crack that. There.
And you see it in contact centers. I mean, the people, the agents, they're on the call and say, hold on a second. Like, and your customer kind of waiting, and what are they doing? They're actually searching. They're going in their thing and searching through all documents, trying to find an answer. It's terrible. Sometimes I've seen it in contacts. Like the agent would stand up and ask people around, like, "Hey, do you know about this and that?" And like they're asking others to get the answer. That shouldn't happen.
Yeah. And these days, with everyone working from home, you've got the additional, which is an actual real thing that I heard on a call when I called a contact center. I can't remember who it was now. I think it was actually my bank. And I spoke to someone, and they didn't end the call in time. So I didn't hang up. I was on loudspeaker. I had my phone over the other side of my desk, and so they didn't hang up on their end. And all of a sudden, I heard Call of Duty start again in the background, gunfires and all that. But yeah, so it's interesting. You talk about agent assist there. And Tariq had mentioned it, and this is something we definitely want to get into. Is maybe let's start from the very beginning for those who have just heard the term agent assist. Yeah. So let's just do a high-level overview of what agent assist actually is.
Yeah. Well, agent assist started on voice channel. In fact, now we have that great agent assist for chat, but it started on voice. And the way it works is, the AI will listen to a live conversation between an agent, a human agent, and a customer. And as it's listening to the conversation, we'll apply our speech-to-text technology to transcribe everything that's happening in that conversation. Diarization and everything will show up on the screen for the agent. But we use that transcription to actually do back-end queries with a model around documents and suggestions that we could surface to the agent in real time. So that was the beginning of Agent Assist, and how we enhanced it is lately is to make you benefit from the work you've done on the self-service channel with DialogFlow, and we're able to actually surface a bot that knows how to handle what you're talking about with the customer, and will help the human agent through the process. And sometimes the bot will just go through the flow and listening to the conversation. Sometimes the bot will help do slot filling. You're going on a trip, you need to know the dates, destination, how many people, etc. The bot will capture that throughout the conversation and fill in those fields that are required in your form. So that having a bot, an AI that helps the human agent is something that we found really powerful versus just recommending documents. So that's really what we're seeing right now taking off in terms of voice. But it all starts with the voice transcription. And a side benefit of Agent Assist is you do get the transcription. Basically, think about how many contact center would love to get the transcription of all their calls. This is not happening today, but if you use Agent Assist, that's one of the benefit of it is you get transcription on every single call. And guess what? This transcription goes where? Into Insights. We'll talk about Insight, I'm sure. But that's the side benefit. So the primary benefit is the recommendation and the virtual agent helping the agent, and whatever we can do to help, as well as a summary of the conversation at the end that reduces the time, the time the agent spends closing the case at the end, but also getting all the transcription of all calls. And that's something that most contact centers never had before.
And how does that manifest itself? Is it an integration into the contact center, so it's a little widget that the call handler can see? Is it a totally different dashboard that they go to their own Google Cloud place and log in, and then they see it there? Like, how does it actually manifest itself in the real world?
Well, we took a strategy from the very beginning to work through partners to deliver this technology. We're an AI company. We think we're very good at doing AI stuff, but we wanted to make sure that we meet the customers where they are. And when we talk to customers, they're telling us, we have a 3-year contract with Genesys, a 5-year contract with Avaya. We're all Cisco here. We have Five9, we have Mitel, we have LivePerson, we have whoever you're naming. So what we've done over the last 2 years is really make sure that our technology is available through these channels, and we don't disrupt. We don't come in and replace everything you have and force you into a complete change management project that will last for 2 years. We're really trying to, whoever you're working with, if you have Genesys, if you have Avaya, Cisco, whoever, Five9, we want to make sure that you can access our technologies. So usually the widgets, how it's seen by the agent, is part of the desktop that the customer has. So they have to build a little bit of an integration there. The bigger customers actually have custom consoles. They don't even use any of the companies I mentioned right now. They have custom console that they built, and so they have to add these widgets. As Google, we do recommend, we have best practices in how to surface that information. We've done a lot of UX research to know what works well, and some of our customers follow it well, some of our customers don't. We don't like when customers are not doing it right, because we feel like they're missing an opportunity to actually get more value, but it happens. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you mentioned integration with partners. We'll talk a bit maybe once we've got through the exploring the actual features and things, a little bit about that partnership approach. I think that's interesting. It'd be interesting for people to understand exactly how that would look. So if they've got a Genesys system and the CCAI is integrated into that, what does that actually look like in reality? And so for the agent assist side of things, when you mentioned partnering with these contact center providers, is it a partnership in so far that once they've created their agent assist, and we'll get on to how you actually create that in a moment, but once they've created it, is it like a one-click thing, like enable this in the Genesys dashboard, or is there still some work that they need to do to get it to surface in there?
Well, I would. Each partner is different in how they integrate, and I'm not an expert in the Genesys integration or Avaya integration, so I would probably turn to them. One thing that we realize is some of the versions of Genesys or Avaya are not finished, like they haven't finished the integration with CCAI, so you need to be careful a little bit about what version you have. I believe Genesys Cloud is pretty well integrated, and that's the one that's kind of ramping right now, for example. Avaya is doing a good job as well. So they will turn it on. Like there's a little bit of work on their end to enable all the features, especially CX being so new. There's some CX features that are not there yet that they need to integrate, but it's coming. I mean, they're working on it. Yeah, so it's basically, I mean, it's a product that the partner will sell. So they're selling, you buy it from them, and we have a deal with them to make sure they get access to all the technology. So. But from a customer standpoint, they're buying from Genesys or via a Google CCAI, but they're buying from them.
Interesting. That's interesting. So how would it how would you do it then? How would you actually create a live agent assist if you would go to Avaya or whoever and say, hey, we want to do this? Do they? Well, let's not go into how that relationship works. Let's go into if we were wanting to create a live agent assist service, what would be the steps that we would need to follow to do that? Yeah,
the partner, and I'll say partner generically, so because there's several, the partner will create a Google Cloud account for you. Basically, I mean, you have to sign up, but there's a service account that they create where they will configure, do the conversation profile and all of the steps that are required to enable agent assist. So turn on the API, create the conversational profile, train the model, ingest the document repository, everything you need to have to make agent assist work. And once that's turned on with that service account from Google, so you have to be a Google customer, then they enable it in their own platform. So, but this is done by the partner, sometimes through SIs. They do that for you. So companies like Quantify or SpringML or 1433 or SATA Systems are all doing a great job. There are others. I apologize if I forgot some, but those are the ones we work with a lot. So there's an enablement. It's not a one click. Just go in Genesys and click and done. There's a little bit of work, and that's typical. I mean, in contact centers, especially when you talk about CX or those kind of deployments, there's always an SI involved in those deployments. No, I've never. I mean, the fully 100% self-service contact center are usually small business offerings. They're not mid-size enterprise kind of solutions.
And then is this a tool that will get better over time as agents use it and maybe provide feedback about which information is useful, which one's not?
Oh, I mean, honestly, we're far from being done. There's quite a lot that we can add. The research is pretty impressive. What's coming and what's going to be available. So we're not done until everybody uses CCAI. That's great. That would be great. But we're really here to empower enterprise to change their business through AI. That's really why we're here, and that's what Google Cloud is here for. And so there's still a lot. This is just the beginning. I mean, we're at the very beginning of that digital transformation powered by conversational AI. What I like about it is conversational AI is probably the first real application of AI that has massive impact for customers that we're seeing now, like really seeing the impact. It's not just on paper or projections. It is generating impact, and that's it's great to see that traction, because now we have interest, and the more interest we get, the more resources we get to fund more research and development and provide new innovation in the space. So it's a virtuous circle that's happening now, and the flywheel has been kicked basically about a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, and now it's really taking off. So my worry is that not enough customers get on the bandwagon and realize that turn around in 2 years and feel that they're completely behind. And some will be like that. Some are really too slow to make decisions. So this is really important. And the research is continuing. We're always improving, always learning. No one is expert in this space. I think it's everybody's still learning.
And then thinking about the AI side of it, so you mentioned you're researching into natural language generation, for example, and with the NLG, if it's wrong, it's clearly wrong, right? But for other things, there might be a little bit of wiggle room. So I'm curious, maybe are you thinking on a product per product basis, feature per feature, or do you have an overarching philosophy of when you focus on precision versus recall, when you focus on getting it right at the cost of missing something, or when you focus on getting everything that's correct at the cost perhaps of including things that aren't there? Because one of the things that is very interesting to me is, certainly for most people who are probably watching this, they're not working at a Google scale company. So any kind of decision you make along this front impacts a lot of people. So how do you go about thinking about that? Is it product per product? Do you have an overarching philosophy? How do you think about focusing on precision versus recall?
Well, I'm thinking at the portfolio level. So it's really the CCAI suite that we mentioned earlier. As I said, the underlying technology, the brain of all of it, is common. Like the improvements we make in speech to text are benefiting DialogFlow, Agent Assist, and Insights, all three. And same thing for text to speech, same thing for NLU. So we can't really think on a product by product in terms of performance, because the performance is common for the three. And that's one of the key, in fact, differentiation in our product is what the investment you make in a bot is actually useful for your Agent Assist, and the NLU improvements you make in DialogFlow can benefit Insights eventually. So I'm seeing it overall. I would say that in terms of you kind of touched on prioritization here. I see this process as iterative. We can't go and solve it all at once, and so you have to prioritize what you solve for first. And what you solve for first is by looking at the data, deploying something, looking at the data and improving on the biggest issues, the thorny problems that you're finding, the customers are really not happy about your service, where people drop most often, how do you solve for that, interactions with sentiment that are not going well. And that's what you want to focus on and improve over time. You can never go in and deliver something that's going to be perfect on day one. That just does not happen. Some of the biggest engagements we have, it takes 3 to 4 months to get a bot to a very good level of containment or customer satisfaction, a great customer experience. Even when we launch, it's good. It's not bad. It's better than what you had before, but you have to iterate on it. And that's where DialogFlow CX is so important. It's all those tools to iterate, to manage your bot, the feedback loop, the experiments. All of that is critical to be able for you to improve your bot over time and learn what's not working. And then you can start improving on it. I had a conversation earlier, actually today, where the customer was asking about how we could, inject where the person was in the app or on the website, what kind of thing, and how do we feed that in the bot? You can, but is that the first? Should you spend your time doing that now versus trying to get a good bot running that does good containment, and then over time add those type of features? I think that's a better approach of being iterative than trying to solve it all from day one.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. It's definitely a journey. I mean, I've had conversations with folks who are trying to join up a bot in a phone line with a journey on a website and trying to make a smooth handoff between an IVR bot and a mobile website and stuff. And it's like, well, really, should you be focused on actually making those conversations work so that they don't need to go to the website in the first place?
That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
And the other thing I noticed also when I talk to customers, I get a lot of customers asking, hey, what if the customer actually calls back for this, and then they chatted, they went on a chat channel and they asked for this, and then and in that case, we need to handle that case. And you're like, how many times does that happen? And corner cases, it's pretty impressive. A lot of our customers are talking about corner cases when there's 20% of their traffic is not handled on simple cases that are not corner cases that they should be focusing on, and then they'll focus on corner cases. Unless the corner cases are horrible, like things like we're paying a lot of attention at Google Cloud around AI principles, so biasing of our models and making sure we're doing the right things and not having models that are biased or are going to have the wrong behavior based on criteria that are not supporting fairness. Those need to be solved with high urgency, obviously. But customers have to let go of a lot of those corner cases at first, when they first deploy. I'm not saying they're not important, but you have to solve for the big use cases first, and then refine to get to those corner cases, because that's when you get your big return.
Reminds me a little bit of when I used to work in service design, and you would create a user journey, or you'd be auditing a user journey or creating something, and the completion rate of a form might be something like 50%, and people are debating what color the button should be, and it's like there's bigger problems than the color of these buttons.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That I just want to we'll get on you because you've touched on improving over time, and presumably that's where insights comes in. But before we get to that, I do want to kind of just back up ever so slightly and get back to that agent assist conversation, because you mentioned that the best way for people to do it, if they have a partnership with a contact center provider like an Avaya or Genesis or whoever, go to them. They'll create the agent assist. They'll kind of implement it. Maybe as a system integrator might help them along with it. In terms of how that's actually done, for those that don't have an integration with those contact center providers, but they still want to kind of have an agent assist capability in maybe it's a homegrown contact center or a contact center that doesn't yet have that Google CCAI partnership in place. We spoke to Ilan Avner from Audio Codes last week, and he was talking about how one of the ways to do this is to basically split the phone signal coming in, so that you've got the choice of whether you want to listen to both the agent and the customer, or if you just want to listen to the customer or whatever it might be, and then basically building a bot based off the back of that conversation, like a normal bot in DialogFlow CX or something like that, and then feeding the responses and the output of that into a widget that you would embed into a contact center. That for me seems like a very difficult way of creating a bot, because people speak to people completely differently than they speak to a bot, for example. We back up, we give you a full backstory, we give long-winded answers, we go around the houses and we deviate, we interrupt and ask questions. There's a whole load of more complexity, I would imagine, that goes into that. But you mentioned that you put the transcript in there. And when you mentioned around analyzing transcripts, it didn't sound as though you were trying to match intents and do that kind of stuff. So if someone wanted to do this without going to Avaya, how would you do it? Do you build a bot? Is that what you're doing? You're building another bot and then you're integrating that somewhere else? Or is there something else going on here with Agent Assist?
So Agent Assist voice today is not accessible directly. It is what we call private API. So it is only via the partners at this point. So if you wanted to use Agent Assist voice today without going to those partners, right now it's not possible. Okay. That's our go-to-market channel. And the way why we said that is, you would have to have a digital channel that is not dependent on telephony. And most of our customers that are targeting Agent Assist have a telephony system in place, and oftentimes it's one of the ones we partner with. So we haven't really opened up the API to anybody else than going through those partners for Agent Assist voice. Every other API is actually open, and Agent Assist chat will be open, as I said this week. But others are not. So Agent Assist chat is you could potentially use our speech API to transcribe the voice in real time and then hit the chat API, the Agent Assist chat API. It's a little hacky. I don't know if that's a pattern I would recommend, but I guess that would be a possibility.
Okay, interesting. And then one last question on integration before we get on to insights is the partnership that you have with contact center providers. So one is Agent Assist. Go to the contact center provider, they'll set up Agent Assist.
Yep.
What about actually having those conversations with customers in the phone lines using DialogFlow CX? So again, I mentioned audio codes. We spoke to them last week. They were talking about their Voice AI Connect product, which connects any bot framework there or thereabouts with any contact center system. So in the DialogFlow CX instance, is the integration such that the contact center provider or the brand can kind of go and create their conversations in DialogFlow, do whatever integrations into their systems they need to, and then, I don't know, dedicate a phone line in their contact center to get it up and running? Like, how does that integration work?
Yeah. I mean, they can use DialogFlow today directly. That's not that you don't have to go through a partner if you don't want to. In fact, DialogFlow is really good at it. In fact, we see a lot of partners, like Audio Code is one. Like they actually integrate with DialogFlow, which is awesome. I think they've done it also for the what we call one-click IVR integration. I think they're one of the partners there. They're using that. But yeah, DialogFlow can be integrated with any channel. So if you have a voice channel you want to send directly to DialogFlow as a stream, actually this is the preferred pattern. You can use DialogFlow. You can do your speech to text and then send the text to DialogFlow for intent detection and flow management, or you can send the audio stream. The best pattern is audio stream, and I'll give you one main reason is we have something called speech adaptation, auto speech adaptation in DialogFlow, and auto speech adaptation uses the biasing features of the speech to text API automatically in your bot, without you having to configure anything. That means that when you send an audio stream to DialogFlow, and DialogFlow knows where it is in the flow, it knows that some intents are going to be probably detected at that point, some entities need to be extracted at that point in the flow. It will bias the speech model toward those entity and those intents, and that makes the speech to text quality much higher and the intent detection much higher, even if the word error rate could be higher, which is bad in certain case. As long as the intent and entity are detected, you're going through the flow and you're progressing in solving the customer's problem. That speech adaptation is a checkbox in DialogFlow. Just check it and done. Call it a day. And that improvement is massive versus doing speech to text first and then sending text to DialogFlow. You're getting a lot better result if you use that.
Interesting. So That then, though, isn't using the CCAI partnership with the contact center.
No.
For that, you would still have to go to the contact center provider for that,
No.
do you? No, you don't.
No, that you do whatever you want. DialogFlow is a product that anybody can access. So if you want to do it direct, you can do it direct.
Okay. So when we talk about the CCAI partnerships with contact center providers, is that partnership more on the agent assist side than it is the CX?
It is, yes. So the partners that I mentioned do integrate with DialogFlow CX for their IVR, integrate with DialogFlow Essentials until now, and do integrate Agent Assist. Where the restriction is on Agent Assist, because Agent Assist voice requires a telephony infrastructure. When you use DialogFlow for voice, it could be a mobile app on your phone, it could be a web plugin, it could be a smart device, smart home assistant, it could be any kind of something that can send a stream of audio over gRPC will work. So much more open. But DialogFlow and Agent Assist are part of our CCAI partnerships, but where the restriction is on Agent Assist voice.
Right. So to clarify then, if someone I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. So someone, let's say that someone has a VIA contact center that has a partnership with CCAI. They can go to a VIA, they can get Agent Assist set up, they can do all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
They have a team, let's say, that can design conversations, and so they can use DialogFlow CX. How would they then integrate that into their contact center? Would that be via this partnership? Is there an easy way of integrating it into the contact center, or would they need to use something like audio codes to make that integration work?
They can do it any way they like. If I would advise to go to a VIA in that case and say, hey, a VIA, I would like to integrate DialogFlow in my contact center. If a VIA is providing the console, it's probably better to talk to a VIA. If they have a different, separate team, separate infrastructure for their bot, then they can go through audio code or whoever they want to use for their stream. I mean, it's more a customer choice at this point. They tend to want to reduce how many people they work with, and that's a trend in general. Mm-hmm. And so if they're doing Agent Assist with a VIA, why not do DialogFlow with a VIA if they can? Although we've seen a lot of companies that use a VIA, for example, for their calls, but use like LivePerson for their chat, and that we see quite often. So they would talk to LivePerson to get access to CCAI chat, and they would take to a VIA for their CCAI Agent Assist.
Makes sense. Cool. Okay then. So we've spoken about analytics or insights in part here and there. Do you want to give us the overview of what insights is? It's including the analytics. You mentioned that the transcripts can be fed into there. Yep. Sounds quite powerful. Like in a nutshell, what is insights?
Yeah, insights is all about understanding conversations that are happening in your contact center. In fact, it's a little more broad than that, because it's really good at understanding what's going on in conversations. So most of the time they'll come from your contact center, but they could be coming from other places as long as they have a conversation format, if I should say. So there's obviously integration between Agent Assist and DialogFlow with Insights, where it's basically a one-click integration. You click it and then it kind of configure a few things and it goes into Insights. But Insights, the goal is to look at those conversations, obviously index them so you can search through them really easily. You can listen to conversations. You can see sentiment across conversation. But you can see things like topic modeling. So you can do topic modeling on top of the conversation. What are conversations about? So you have a bunch of NLU-based topic modeling that are like word cloud type of stuff that are telling you, what are people discussing, the trending topics, things like that. The other thing that's exciting is the ability to do phrase matching. And phrase matching is NLU-based as well. So you say things like, give me all the conversation that had a greeting or didn't have a greeting. And you don't have to say what kind of greeting. It's not like, give me the conversation where you find hello, or when you find, how are you? No, you say greetings, and it will use NLU to know what a greeting is. You don't have to do it yourself, and then it will find out. And that is very attractive to companies that are have in compliant regulated industry, And regulated industry, where you have to say certain things at the end of the call or before the call, before you say or ask something, that those sentences are pretty defined, and the agent has to say them. So you can easily search and say, show me all the conversation. That was not happening. And so for a QA manager or contact center team lead, this tool is fantastic. Like they go from spending hours and hours listening to conversations that are irrelevant, trying to find one that's not working and go talk to the agent, instead of having a little typing a few search queries and getting all those conversation and being able to target the coaching very appropriately. So between the topic extraction, the topic modeling, topic extraction, the search, and navigation within a single conversation, and the phrase matching, kind of NLU powered phrase matching, you're really getting a very, very good view of the data overall, plus being able to drill in very, very quickly within the tool. And one extra thing here is our goal is not to host or restrict access to any of that information. And one of the power of Insights is there's a one-click export of data to BigQuery. And that is helpful because a lot of our customers are saying, hey, I have some CRM data about this customer, I have some ERP data, billing and information about this customer. I'd like to map the conversations that are happening with this customer with the CRM and ERP data that I have. Well, guess what? Put everything in BigQuery and you have nice Looker dashboards on top of it. And then you can really get a lot of information about what's happening across all your channels, from the conversation contact center, to the purchase, to the activity over time and the lifetime value of your customer. That is made possible by that integration with BigQuery. It's a one-click export, very easy. All conversation you get access to, we don't restrict you. All recordings, the voice recordings can go into a GCS bucket, are yours. Like we're not here to host your data or do anything with your data. We're here to provide you the insights and the value from that data.
I've seen a couple of providers, one in particular, who one of the first things they would do is do kind of like a listening pilot. First time they start working with a contact center is they would just essentially stick the technology into the phone line, gather a bunch of conversations over the course of a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and then essentially model what conversations they should be prioritizing as far as automation is concerned based on that data. It sounds like this would lend itself to that. Is that one of the ways that you would recommend using something like this?
Insights will definitely help doing that, exactly. What's good about it is you don't have to listen in. Actually, not the first, but we have quite a few customers that are in our preview right now that are using historical conversation. They did actually store years of conversations that they don't, and they have no idea what's in there. And the first thing they do is actually feeding that into Insights and figuring out what's going on. And then you go into a live mode where you get the stream, into Insights. The best way to use Insight today, because it's still in preview, is to drop everything in a GCS bucket if you can, and then we'll take it from there. That's an easy one. What's coming later is a CPREC integration, which will make it a lot easier to fork data from your contact center directly into Insights.
Nice. One of the things that we've been talking about recently and posted about it as well, written a couple of articles about it, is this concept of trying to help people in the contact center space understand what kind of things they should be using to measure the success of bots that they implement. So this concept of containment rate is often said in the contact center, and all that means for those that are not from that world is that someone calls up and they don't reach an agent, therefore being contained, which is a little bit like they're trying to use the IVR as some little kind of containment agent, like a jail that kind of just boxes off and stops people from getting through to agents. So I just don't think it's a very helpful way of explaining what we're trying to do. And what we're actually trying to do is help people get answers to questions, or help people access services, or allow people to self-serve, basically. But that term containment, I've noticed in that space has almost been transferred over to this kind of automation using conversational AI. And a number of conversations I've had that says, oh well, we've got conversational AI in our IVR, and our containment rate is XYZ, and it's like, well, how many successful conversations are you having? And no one can seem to answer that question. So we've been trying to do a little bit of education around how do you measure a successful conversation. And you mentioned there that the first time you go live with something isn't the isn't the end, rather, and that the first few months is all about iterating. So I'm wondering if you can speak to the tools that exist within CCAI and within this toolkit that would enable people, one, to measure the success of conversations, and then two, figure out how they can go about improving it.
Yeah, that's very important. And Insights plays a role there, but Insights is more offline. It's after the fact at this point. DialogFlow itself comes with purely DialogFlow focused analytics. So it tells you about the flow, what's used in the flow, how many conversations go through a certain path in DialogFlow. And that helps with your measure of containment, which is, yes, it's not being escalated. Now you can measure containment differently. You can say, I will measure conversations that are not escalated, but I will have a look back window, 24 hours, whatever you want, to see if that person calls back again or reaches back again on the same subject. And that could be a better measure of containment. It's not perfect, but it is better than saying, yeah, somebody dropped because they was frustrated. Yeah, the call is contained, but if the person hasn't resolved their problem, you have to look back. Are they calling back? And your callback window could be whatever you want. But that's more an internal process and how you want to measure as a company, how you want to measure your containment rate. We are asked by customers about resolution rate. Resolution is very hard to measure, and we tend to be cautious about what we call. How do you know that a problem was actually resolved? Sometimes it is clear. It is, the customer says it in the call, and that's easy to measure. We can detect that. But sometimes they'll say, okay, well, try this and that. Try rebooting your PC, and okay, I'll try. And they hang up and they never call back. Was it resolved? I don't know. Maybe it did work. Maybe they found another way to make it work. I have no idea. And so resolution depends on many other information that you don't have. And so you can't really measure resolved rate. Now you can measure CSAT out of the call. I'm not a big fan of the way CSAT is done today because it's mostly survey based. And I personally only field surveys when I'm really not happy or really happy about a call. If I don't care, I don't feel it. So you don't get a real view. One thing that we're working on is measuring CSAT by understanding how the conversation goes. That's an interesting research area, by the way. That was actually the very first premise of Insights, was to do that, is to provide a CSAT score that was automatically calculated. And it's not CSAT it's not the exact pure term, but it's a success rate or satisfaction rate, either throughout the call or at the end of the call, derived from how the conversation went. It's based on sentiment. It's based on what's being said. So some NLU there. That I think is more promising in measuring correctly if a call went well or not. Which a call could be escalated to an agent but still go well. I think that's a successful call. The fact that it's not escalated is not a success in itself. What should matter is the customer happy with the interaction they had with you. And sometimes it is through an escalation to an agent, sometimes it's through a virtual agent. So you should not discard the need for talking to a human person. I think that's important. But measuring the how the call goes with new types of metrics is something that we're really looking at to improve as part of our both Insights and in general in Agent Assist or DialogFlow.
Interesting. Yeah, some cases you actually want the call to be escalated, don't you? Sometimes it's one of those cases where you just use the bot to gather up some information beforehand and then escalate it on after that.
Well, the best way to talk to an agent is to say you want to cancel your subscription. You get to escalate to an agent right away. No bot will do that.
That's true. And yeah, no website will let you do that either. You try and go into Sky. I don't know if you got Sky over in the US, but over here it's like what what is it? I suppose it's like a bit like TiVo or Comcast or whatever. You try cancelling your Sky subscription and you have no chance. You have to make about 4 different calls. You have to give them a reason. You know, they don't just cancel it for you. It's like, oh, why do you want to cancel? It's like, what's it got to do with you? Yeah, it's mad. It's mad.
I'm not gonna comment on people.
Yeah,
Some of them are customers, so
yeah, I bet they probably are. Yeah, I wouldn't expect you to do that. I often give anecdotes about companies that have terrible experiences. But yeah, there you go. That's it. But anyway, this has been an absolute pleasure. Dustin, any final thoughts? Any last questions for Antony?
No final questions other than no, I think this was great. Sorry to the people we weren't able to answer questions to, but I think a lot of that is around Dialogflow, the capabilities and what do you do. So perhaps where can people go and find out more if they have specific questions about the Dialogflow product?
Yeah, there's always more documentation we're putting out. We are always told we don't have enough, so that's an ongoing work. You know, I see like conditional branching. Yes, we do that in DialogFlow CX. It's great actually. You know, protect data. All data is encrypted at rest, in transit, and customer data. We don't touch it all. You can hook up Dialogflow with our DLP pipeline, so remove PIIs from everything that's going out of it. So that's interesting. Actually, we do have some research going on that are we're trying to get our PII removal system to be more aware that it is a telco conversation or FinServ conversation or healthcare conversation, and tune toward that to be a little more accurate than a more generic DLP system. So we have research going on in that sense as well. That's going to be really interesting. But yeah, I mean, we're adding more and more content online, every week, and hopefully people will get self-serve quickly on the documentation. But great size, some of those I mentioned are really good. They really are experienced in building bots. Don't underestimate the quality and the value of a good conversational architect. It's not something you learn in a training in 2 weeks. Like it takes time to be good at it, and the value good conversational architect, I would say those are important people in the success of the project. And then with good tools like our CCAI suite, I think you'll be well equipped to do great in transforming your customer experience.
Wicked. That's wicked, Antony. Really appreciate you joining us. I do think we've used Dialogflow quite a lot, and I've used CX here and there, and it's a nice tool. I haven't used Agent Assist yet, but definitely like it. Love the work that you're doing. I think the partnership angle is a really smart one because it's in a position then to potentially become the default go-to technology essentially for those use cases in the contact center. I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of the strategy around becoming the default, because as we've learned from paperless billing, default behaviors tend to kind of stick around. So I think that's a really smart move. So yeah, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. And
thanks for having me.
That's been a pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you everyone for joining us as well. And as Dustin said, apologies we didn't get to all the questions. And Antony, thanks for skipping through a few at the end there. We will be back next week, next Thursday, as always, same time. So I'm going to start saying, I always want to say same bat time, same bat channel. I don't know if anyone used to watch the old classic Batman from back in the day. That's yeah. So join us next week, same bat time, same bat channel. Appreciate it. See you soon.